Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and in today's video, I am going to review this. The Topping D70 Pro Octo Digital to Analog Converter and Preamp. This is a $600 US piece of gear here. It is on loan to me from Apos Audio, so thanks to Apos Audio for sending this over for evaluation. Apos has asked nothing in return other than an affiliate link to this product, which you will see in the description below, and otherwise has made no attempt to influence my opinion in either way on this piece, as they are a very hands-off outfit in that regard. All right, quick note on affiliate link money. If you like what I say about this product and you want to buy it, please consider using the affiliate link down below. I will get a few bucks back if you do. That helps supports the channel, and so far all affiliate link money has gone right back into the channel, either to buy new gear to review or to buy support gear like lights, microphones, that sort of thing, or cover shipping costs, you know, business running kind of stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and do shameless self-promotion, and then we'll come back on the other side and talk more about the Topping D70 Pro Octo DAC.
Hi, I'm Wave Theory's human companion, and he wants you to know that your support of this YouTube channel helps keep the reviews coming. If you enjoy Wave Theory's honest, thorough style, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the links in the description below to sign up for the Patreon or send him a tip through PayPal. All right, enjoy the musings.
D70 Pro Octo. That's an interesting name. What's going on with that Octo thing right there? And the name Octo here, of course, comes from, I believe it's the Latin root for the number 8. Okay, and the reason for that is to do the digital to analog conversion in this box. We have a circuit board in there that uses 8, yes, 8, and therefore Octo. Top of the line Cirrus Logic CS43198 DAC chips in there. That's definitely an interesting approach, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment, although there's not a ton of additional info I can give you on why there is 8 of them in there. Let me take just a moment here to kind of set the stage a little bit, and also declare what some people will likely call one of my biases, although I'm going to argue that this is an earned bias, if you will, here in just a moment. If you have been following my channel and following my review work at large, you have realized that I am no fan of topping, okay? Why? Well, for the most part, I generally don't think they sound very good, okay? At least not in comparison to their similarly priced competition, okay? I do not dispute the fact that they measure extremely well in a narrow range of measurement tests, okay? I don't dispute that at all. So if you are interested in a measurement-first piece of audio gear, in this case a DAC, this, like all toppings, has just near perfection in its measurements and all of that. Where I struggle with topping is when I put headphones on my head or I turn on speakers and I listen to music. And that, to me, is where they have often fallen down, okay? In the past, I have just found them to not be nearly as resolving or as fast and responsive to the electrical signal that is a music wave, basically, okay, in the past. So, and they have lots of features, they're well built and all of that, but they just fall behind on sound. So every time I get a new piece of topping in, I'm like, okay, is this the one where they figure it out? And so far I have been disappointed. Does this one break out of that mold? We'll talk here a little bit more in a moment about that. Now, why am I declaring that to you up front? Okay, well, first of all, I just think it's good for the sake of transparency to say where I stand on this brand and why. Okay, and am I a crazy person for saying that? Because in the review sphere, at least particularly on YouTube, there are several reviewers out there that I just flat disagree with on topping and their all-around quality, at least sound quality. Okay, so what's going on with that, and like, does that matter? Well, here's the thing. Now, I'm not saying that my fellow reviewers don't come from a background like this. I'm just saying that for me, I grew up in a house where a lot of different musical instruments were played, and I heard them from a very young age, all the way through my upbringing. Okay, piano, saxophone, cello, bass guitar, family members singing in choir all the time. I ran sound systems from the time I was about 10 years old and basically had to self-teach myself how to listen to all of that. And I did have a little bit of training on what all of the buttons do, but a lot of it was just trial and error, learning what all of the different buttons and knobs on a soundboard do and how they affect the sound and so forth. And then now 3+ years into this reviewing effort here, a little over 2 years on YouTube and a little over a year prior to that in written form, I have heard now a wide variety of different product types, different product price ranges, and all of that kind of stuff. And to my ears, toppings are consistently just not getting it right in terms of like having a natural timbre or sounding like the real thing. So I am just declaring that up front. Right? Just to be honest and transparent in the review, I've got to be honest and transparent about myself as much as possible. So I do come into these topping reviews with a lot of skepticism and probably some bias. But again, I am going to declare that as an earned bias because my ears have consistently told me that there you don't, well, measure up, okay? Kind of to table the turns there, okay? So to speak. So take that for what it's worth as we dive in here, and we'll move on with the review and talk more about this piece coming forward here. All right. So with that out of the way, back to the D70 Pro Octo. So $600 US and built around 8 Cirrus Logic DAC chips and all of that. It is a fully balanced device. It can function as a preamp, so you can vary the output level of the analog outputs, if you will. It will also do DSD decoding up to DSD 512, and it is rated to decode PCM signals up to 32-bit 768 kilohertz sampling rate. Now, one question that I have about that high PCM decoding there is those Cirrus Logic chips that this is built around max out at 32-bit 368 kilohertz sampling rate conversion. Now, there are 8 of them in here. There's no word on how those are configured, whether they are in series, whether they are in parallel, or anything like that. So the numbers are there to work out to get to an actual real 768 kilohertz sampling rate, but there's no word in there on how that is done, okay, inside the unit there. So just keep that in mind for whatever it's worth. And again, like back to the 8 DAC chip part of this, I still don't know why we have 8 DAC chips in here. I have looked at Topping's website, I have looked at Apos's website and Shenzhen Audio and all of that, trying to find out, is there just a simple explanation in there as to why there are 8 DAC chips in this thing and it's only a stereo output. Like there's only 2 channels of analog output on this thing, left and right. So it's not a surround processor or a surround DAC or anything like that with those 8 DAC chips. It's just a stereo DAC with 8 DAC chips, and I just can't find just a simple coherent breakdown of what the purpose is for having all of those chips in it. Okay, so if somebody knows, because I genuinely don't, and I have done a lot of reading trying to figure it out, please say so down in the comments below. So with that aside, we'll move on and we'll just evaluate this like I do any other DAC. We'll talk about build and other features and the sound quality and then how it stacks up to some of its competition. Because I have right here just a sampling of other DACs in the price range. The SMSL DO300 is here. A cheaper one that I got out for a comparison is an OG shit Modius. So that is here. And then also just got in the tiny little Chord Mojo 2. So that got some run in a comparison with this as well. And I am still working on like a big mid-fi DAC roundup. I'm getting close to being able to put that together because I'm trying to be thorough, but of course it can't be exhaustive. But there's like one more piece out there that I'm trying to get in to be able to do a meaningful roundup on that. All right. so back to this thing then. Let's go ahead and do unit tour. Multifunction knob and power button here. We have a nice big display and full color display screen here that has 3 touch sensitive buttons right next to it for home, input selection, and then to enter the menu. And when you enter the menu, you can navigate the menu with this knob right here. Or Topping has included their fairly standard remote control, their RC15A remote control. It looks like this. So you can access all of the basic functions a little more quickly and a little more easily with this thing. All right, so then looking at the rest of the build, like the aluminum casing, or like the whole chassis here is like an aluminum box, and then like the guts of it slide in and out of the back, I'm pretty sure, because I really don't see any seams in the case, so that's a well-built, solid thing going on there. Round back, the input-output options. We've got the power input here. We have 12-volt trigger in and out, so if you want to do external power cycling, you can connect there. Then we have the inputs. We have 3 flavors of SPDIF digital input: RCA coaxial, Toast-Link fiber optic, and AES EBU, which is SPDIF over a balanced 3-pin XLR connection. Then we have the USB input here, and we have the stem right here to screw on the Bluetooth antenna, because this thing will do Bluetooth up to Bluetooth 5.1. Then over here we have the analog outputs, where we have the single-ended RCA stereo pair here, and then the dual 3-pin XLR balanced output right there. The outputs are switchable. You can tell it to output to only the XLR or only the RCA, or both at the same time, and then you can either set it to a fixed volume output or leave it in preamp mode so that you can adjust the volume from the DAC here and again use it as a preamp. So it's fairly full-featured. Like, Topping DACs have always had a good feature set. They've also always been well physically made. And all that. I have no complaints about its feature set or its build quality. The menu is nice and big now, so the little display screen is nice. You can read everything nicely. It's got a lot of good information when music is playing, like sampling rate and volume level. And there's also just fun little like voltmeter almost kind of things, like level meters bouncing up and down as music plays, which I think is fun, okay? But you can also cycle through different display options in there and just display different things. So, like, the display output is cool, it's fun, but, you know, that's really all it is, right? It's just cool and fun, and sometimes has helpful information on it. All right, so then let's start turning our attention towards the sound quality here, and we'll talk test gear real quick. The majority of the time that I listen to this on my main rig, I use the coaxial input and had that run through my Singer SU6 DDC, which was in turn fed by a Sonor Ultra Rendu streamer, which served as a Roon endpoint. Okay, where I would play lossless FLAC files or high-res FLAC files either locally or streaming from Qobuz, or local DSD files, which would have to be converted to PCM to go through the coax input on this. All right, it also got some run being plugged direct USB into my Microsoft Surface Pro 4 computer, which is running Windows 10, and then also using Ottervana there to play the same kinds of file types that I mentioned earlier, plus some high-res or some really high sampling rate files, some upsampled files, because I wanted to like see if that the DAC chips in here topping out at 384 kilohertz sampling and then playing some files that are 700 plus kilohertz sampling rate, if that did anything funky to the sound. And so I'll report on that here in just a moment as well. All right, downstream from that, the headphone amps, again, primarily using headphone amps here to check this thing that this would have been plugged into, would have been the my Vioelectric HPA V281, the Hi-Fi-Man Golden Wave Prelude, which I am nearing being able to do a review on that one. Okay, also the Headamp GSX Mini and the Lake People G111 Mark II. And then specifically single-ended, I broke out the Erzatich Perfidus amplifier here for a little bit as well. headphones that I plugged into here would have gotten time would have been my stable of the top 3 that I'm really using a lot for evaluation purposes these days, just because they give me so much information about what things are doing. And that would be the Hi-Fi-Man Susvara and the Hi-Fi-Man HE1000 SE, along with the original Focal Utopia. I also got some time in with this one using the JM Audio XTC2, which you see one of them. I've got 2 flavors of that one in for review as well, so keep an eye out in the future for that review. And then, was there anything else? That's probably enough anyway to tell you what's going on here with the sound of this thing. Okay. What did I learn here for the sound? Let's see. If you like the topping house sound, if that's what you're after, that's what you get here. And it is impressive to, in a sense, that we can keep getting these different approaches to doing digital to analog conversion using like an AKM chip or a Sabre chip from ESS or, you know, 8 Cirrus Logic chips in here, and that we just get a very consistent sound signature out of topping DACs through all of that. Okay, I don't agree with the common assertion that topping gear is the one that gets the most out of the way of the sound and just presents the music. I do think that they have a house sound that is distinctly topping. And to me, and that is also true of this DAC. And so to me, that includes, and again, is present in here, where you just get that super quiet, like black void sonic background kind of presentation. Okay, so I mean, they are quiet, very, very quiet. All right, the perceived frequency response here, so like tone and tonal balance and that sort of thing on this one, accentuates the mid-range just a little bit. Toppings in general have rolled off the true sub-bass. You get much below, you know, 50, 60 hertz. They start to lose a lot of their energy and compared to their competition. Yes, I realize that on a frequency sweep graph, they are going to be ruler flat from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Not disputing that. When you put something in here that's an actual music waveform, I am telling you that topping consistently lacks sub-bass presence as compared to their competition, and that is true here. And could I pull that out on a blind test? I mean, I've done a blind test of that on my own individually here in my home, teaching one of my family members how to hook something up, so I don't know which thing is which when I switch to it. And yeah, consistent observation there is that below about 50 or 60 hertz, toppings, and this one does it too, kind of run out of gas, kind of run out of steam. They just lose presence in that really low sub-bass. This unit, more than I have experienced in toppings past, also seems to roll off the top end a little bit. So there's not quite as much air or sparkle going on in the top end too. So this one a little bit more so than some others, although my memory is, what was it, the D30 Pro also had this a little bit. There's just a little bit of like upper mid-range in particular forwardness on this, which tends towards a shouty, honky presentation more often than other DAC brands that I've heard. And again, that applies to this unit as well. Okay, so there's that. Now, the treble control, also not great here. It's even though the treble is rolled off a little bit in terms of presence, there's still, again, more of a tendency towards sharp S's and T's and that sort of thing from the D70 Pro than there are from a lot of other DACs, and that also from memory is, again, another topping trait. Some people argue that that is, the, topping getting out of the way and presenting what's in the signal. That's one of those things where it's like, okay, when you're the outlier, are you the pioneer or are you just not getting it right, right? And that's a thing that we can argue about until we're blue in the face about what the nature is here. I'm going to say that, like, on that question, it would be really stunning if it turns out that Topping is the company that bursts onto the scene just a few short years ago and finds the magic formula for perfect audio reproduction, and all they had to do was tickle an audio precision measurement rig in all the right ways, right? It just seems to me very unlikely that they're going to be the ones that magically figured it out like that, and that's all they had to do, okay? Because we've been doing this audio thing now for like, you know, nearly 100 years, trying to develop audio signal chains and continually improve upon them and so forth. So that's just my take. You're free to disagree with me on that. Other aspects of this DAC, everything else is fine. Like there's a good amount of, I don't want to say that, not everything else is fine, but there's a decent amount of physicality to it. So there's a good attack and like good thump and hit and all that on the dynamics. So there's a fair amount of bass slam in that. Like a lot of other topping gear, it does squelch the decays a little bit, so it's a little bit too quick on the decay, and it ends up coming across just a little bit dry as a result, although it is not as bad in that regard as some toppings past. Okay, the resolution is also where I have a big issue here, because how to say this, like, it's slow. What do I mean by that? This DAC, and like I heard this on Topping's flagship too, the D70 SE is where I first noticed this, can sound utterly amazing when you're not asking it to do much. What do I mean by that? Play a simple song. And I'm not using the term simple here to insult these artists or anything like that, because this is not a comment on artistry or quality of music. A track like Hello by Adele or Elephant by Jason Isbell, just to name two examples of this. Those tracks like that can sound really, really good here. And the reason for that is because they are typically just a single vocalist and like one or two instruments that are not played super fast or intricately all of that much, okay? For the most part. There are passages in those songs that do get a little bit more complex, but for the most part, they are fairly chill songs in terms of the amount of stuff going on in them. This, and like the previous, the D90 SE, can sound amazing with that kind of thing. Sound pretty strong there. Where they start to struggle is like the more vocalists you add, the more instruments you add, the more complex the audio waveform becomes, in other words. The more of these get mushy, and you start to lose spatial integrity and spatial coherence. In other words, the holography of it starts to collapse. The more you start to lose instrument and vocal separation, the more you start to lose the subtle fine details that you were hearing when everything was a little bit more chill. So that's what I mean by slow. Like, they lack the speed to resolve all of that stuff. Okay, and this has been a consistent thing that I've heard with Topping, and like I first heard this back when I compared the D90 SE with my original Shit Bifrost 2. Played a track like In the Hall of the Mountain King, okay, which is written by Grieg as part of the Peer Gynt suite. I used the Herbert von Karajan version. Starts off slow and quiet and chill in its orchestral stuff there, and the toppings sound great out of the bat. And I remember like hearing that Topping D90 SE compared to my Bifrost 2 and going, wow, I didn't really expect the topping to be this much better. And then the whole orchestra comes in and the whole thing just flip-flops. Very noticeably so, where the Bifrost 2 is just like maintaining the holography and its resolution and just holding it together so much better, and the D90 just kind of went mushy and just lost a lot of its integrity. Like, I could still hear and understand what was going on, but it was nowhere near what the Bifrost 2 was able to do in terms of just holding it all together, separating everything out, but also creating a nice coherent presentation to it. A similar problem to that the D90 has is afflicting the D70 Pro Octo here as well, where the busier music gets, the more it struggles to hold it together. Okay, so let's talk comparisons a little bit then on that. Oh, let me just come back to that. Is that my anti-topping bias coming into play when I say that? Or, you know, what is that? And like that result that I got with at least the D90 SE a while back, and I'll link to my review of that in the description below, completely surprised me. Did not expect that at all. So I don't chalk it up to expectation bias there, because if I'm biased about anything, it's like, do I expect to hear differences between audio products, between different audio products? Yeah, I do, because they are different. They are made differently. They do things differently. They're going to have different impacts on the signal going through them, okay? That's physics, all right? It's the nature of the difference. What is the difference? And like that result specifically surprised me. So picking that out couldn't be an expectation biased thing, because I do expect them to be different, but I don't know how. And so what exactly is the difference is a thing I can't really bias myself into, except maybe you could argue this time around I did it on this because I knew to look for it. Was it an expectation bias at that point? Then that turned into a confirmation bias. I don't know. Possibly. I will let you decide if you want to get this one and try it for yourself and compare it to another piece. You can come back to me and say whether you agree or disagree. This is just my take. Okay, back to the comparisons. I think the most like-for-like comparison that I have here is the SMSL DO300. And I say like-for-like because the feature set here is the closest to this one. The input-output options, the closest to this one. It also has a remote control and all of that. Now, it's an ESS Sabre DAC, only one chip in there, and it's $550 US. And I will take the DO300 over the D70 Pro Octo all day, every day, because it's more resolving. It holds itself together and presents a nice, clear, clean, well separated, but still more holographic presentation, even when music gets busy. And it still measures excellently. So if you need measurements, really ridiculous measurements, to feel good about what you're listening to, I would argue that the DO300 still provides that, but also sounds really good. It has more sub-bass presence than the topping. It has more treble control than the topping, and all of that stuff going on in there too. So I easily prefer the DO300 to my ears. Hey, original ship Modius. I got this out because it was $200 US. Its successor now, the Modius E, which I have not heard yet, is $230. I got this out to say, like, okay, this, in my opinion, not competing very favorably with a $550 unit, which is close to it in price. Just to hold the Mojo 2 up here, this is way, way out ahead of the topping. Not even close. It's a curb stomping. Okay. Got the Modius out because I'm like, well, you know, how does this do against, you know, a $200 piece? Features, the D70 Pro Octo is, you know, it's got the variable output. It's got more input options. It has it has more decoding options. Can do DSD, can do a high bitrate stuff and all of that, which I need to talk about the high bitrate. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Right. But otherwise, I mean, this is an AKM-based, single AKM-based chip, and all of the chip-based DAC, I should say, balanced and all of that. And kind of noticed the same thing I was talking about. Quiet, calm, simple passages. The D70 Pro Octo outperforms this one. As things start getting busier and more complicated, the shit holds its namesake together more than the topping D70 Pro Octo does, and it's noticeable. Okay, and so I will just leave that there. Real quick, did the high bit rate, high sampling rate, I should say, decoding help with this? A little bit. I think the I have a couple of files where it's like using Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, which I've talked about before, to upsample a track. take that track, upsample it to, you know, either from 44 kilohertz up to 705 kilohertz, or 96 kilohertz up to 768 kilohertz, you know, all that, play that back through here. I think some of the treble control did improve on this, so I think that does help a little bit. It's not a full fix though. It's not a full fix, okay? It just improves a little bit, and I still noticed some treble sharpness in there, and I just still noticed just not doing a great job of instrument and vocal separation, spatial holography, and all that, even with those higher sampling rates. But it doesn't get worse, let's put it that way, with the higher sampling rates. Okay, so let's put a bow on this and give you kind of like my bottom line on the topping D70 Pro Octo. I do think in an absolute sense, topping is getting better. They are becoming more competitive with their market competition, but they are still quite a ways behind when it comes to actually sounding good with music. I don't question that they tickle an audio precision measurement rig in all the right ways. That's not up for debate. That's not disputable. So if that's not disputable. If that is all that matters to you, you know, here is yet another option, okay? Knock yourself out. For me, when it comes to musical enjoyment, they still have a long way to go. They can sound really good, and I will say here that there is I do think there is a use case where this could be the answer for someone, and that is if you like simpler music. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean that you've got like a single vocalist and like a very small number of instruments, one or two instruments going on at the same time. You're basically putting a sine wave or a music waveform through here that's getting closer and closer to a pure tone sine wave kind of thing. Then this can sound really, really good. So if that's the bulk of your music listening and you need the measurements and the feature set and all of that, I think that this could be a good answer for you there. You get into more complex music and just things start to fall apart to my ear. And it's hard for me to recommend something like this when, you know, a $230 product is sitting out there that handles a much wider range of music more proficiently than this one does. So we're still kind of stuck in the same cycle for me and topping officially. And I recognize that I am going against the grain of a lot of different reviewers there. That's okay. I have my reasons. They have theirs. We can disagree. I'm here to help inform you, the audience, of like why I say this, so that hopefully you can also hear all sides, all points of view on this and make an informed buying decision. But I will go ahead and wrap it up there and just say I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the topping D70 Pro Octo. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Check out my PayPal and my Patreon and do all of those things you do to support YouTube channels. And as always, enjoy the music.